Okay, we're gonna do the bidding. So, are you ready to get lost within 5 minutes? Because I'm gonna go a little bit faster in terms of like the geometry stuff, I think. So, I don't know. Have your Blender ready? I'm gonna set up screencast keys here so that you can kind of follow along with like what's actually visually happening on the screen. So we got ourselves a cube, and we're gonna turn this into a little bitty. I already kind of like know the sizes of this, so we're just gonna go ahead and put it together, I guess. First of all, I'm gonna click on item up here. If you don't see this, it's because the end panel is hidden. You can click on this little arrow up here on the right hand side of your 3D view, and it'll pop open. Should be on item already. If it's not, click on this. And make sure you have your cube selected. Now, change the dimensions with this. What I did was I did 0.14 here on height, and then I did 0.08. Both of these. This is kind of like the dimensions that I had for the little bit I had. Maybe it was smaller. It might have been like 0.12, probably. There you go. So for you, this will probably look like it'll probably look like this right now. It'll probably be like in the floor. This is fine, by the way. Just keep it like that. This is completely fine. Once you have this set up with these dimensions, you see the scale is still set to like this. Press Control A. We're gonna apply the scale of this, so the scale of your bitty is exactly 1. That's what you'd expect it to be. There you go. Then you can scale it by 2, and then it becomes double the size, right? Makes sense. We kind of covered this last time in the fishbowl tutorial. So let's shape it. Go into edit mode, press tab, or up here, click on this little drop down and click on edit mode. And now I do Control R. This for loop cutting. And it'll try and cut a loop on the perpendicular side of the edge that you're hovering over. So you want it on the side here. Don't click yet. You want to scroll up once like this. And if you scroll up more, you'll see you get more loop cuts. We just want 2. All right. And then you press enter right after. I don't know why it said return. That was enter. I got 2 loop cuts. Your cube should kind of look like this right now. So you got 2 loop cuts. We only want 1 loop cut. So we're selecting the upper loop cut here. You can alt left click in order to get this ring selection. For me, it's double click because I have my settings set up like that. And then you press Control X to dissolve the vertices on this. So now we just have this bottom one down here. All right. Next up, we want to give it the shape of the bitty. So up here, go into face select. Select this one. Select the face at the top and at the bottom. Just like that. Make sure this icon up here is highlighted. It's called Auto Merge Vertices because we're going to merge everything into the center. And right here, you have Transform Pivot Point. This is basically like the pivot point, the central location of where your transforms are going to happen. In this case, we're going to scale, and we want to scale them onto the faces that we have selected, the individual faces. So what we're going to select here is individual origins. I'm going to show you real quick what it does if we don't do this. So we want to scale it to 0. It would do this if you scale to 0, and we do not want this. We want it to behave like this. And there you go. They just kind of folded into itself, those faces. Yeah. So we basically have the shape already. This is how you make a biddy. Not too complicated, right? Just like 5 minutes. 5 minutes? Are you lost, Fallmill? I hope not. All right. Well, go out to edit mode. Go back into object mode right now. Now go around a little bit. And right now, you can see it is a nice white color. And if we go check the shading mode that we're in, I'm holding Z right now on my keyboard. If you hold Z in the 3D view, you get all your view modes here, your render modes, I guess. And we're gonna put it on material preview because we're gonna start coloring this thing. And it requires a little bit of setup. Emote wheel looking, yes, there you go. So material preview. And now you might not immediately understand what's going on here, but this is basically based on lighting in your scene. So you don't have to do anything with this, but like if I mess around with this here, you can see it actually reflects based on this light. You don't really understand probably where this light's coming from, but if we turn up the world opacity, you can see this is the skybox that the light is based on, and it changes depending on what we have. I usually like this one, but really it doesn't really matter. We don't need the world opacity because we're going to make this flat shaded because we want to give it a toony look, right? So how do we give it a toony look, right? First of all, we need to give it some material. So what we do is we click on our cube, and then in this window, which is called the properties window, we want to click on the material button. It's a red little circle with a checkerboard pattern on it. And we click new, add a new material, as it says with the tooltip. Material. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to double click it. I'm going to call it Vertex Colors because we're going to be using Vertex Colors for this. And if you don't have this window open, if you don't have this window, you can make one. I'm going to show again how you can make this, and I keep messing this up every single time I try to do it. What you do is you go to the corner of your 3D view or any other view, and you're going to, once you see the mouse icon kind of change into this cursor kind of thing, you click it and you drag it into the other window, kind of like this. You see now there's like a little preview of how the views are going to show up. Just pull it up like this. You should have two of the same windows now. The one that we just created, we're going to go on the top left, and we're going to change this from 3D viewport editor type to shader editor. All right. And so then you get this window. This is where you change the shader of your material that we just made. Yeah. Zoom in a little bit. And now we're gonna press Shift A. You can also, right click. Actually, I don't think you can right click. You can click Add on the top here if you want to. I don't really like this. I like searching for what I want. So I do Shift A on the keyboard. Okay. Shift A. And then I'm going to be looking with search. I'm going to be looking for attribute. I click on color attribute. Apparently it's in the input. So you just want to look it up. You can click on input. And then color attribute. It's right here. And this is going to use our vertex colors. So how do we get it to show up? There's two ways. I would suggest you Control-Shift click this, or drag this into the surface material output like so. You can also put it in the principled in the principled base color, and then keep this here, and then it will have like a mix of like lighting from your world and of the vertex colors. Now I don't want that, since I want it just to just be cartoony, so I'm just having a color attribute. You can get rid of the principled DF if you want to, because we're not going to be using it, or at least I'm not going to be using it. What you do is up to you. And now we can start painting our biddy. So go back into your 3D view with your mouse and select your cube. How do you make a new material? Select your cube. Or your biddy, I guess. Call it biddy. Then in this window, properties window, you go down to this red circle with the checkerboard on it. It says material. So normally it would probably be on this or something. Click on the circle, the red circle, and then click add material. Look here, it says new. Just click on that. Preferably add, just like on the bottom, the one that I just clicked, because if you just click the plus button to add material slot, it's not going to have material on it. You'll have to make one regardless if you don't have one yet. Material slot's basically like a slot for your material. It's kind of like if you have a loadout in a game, right? And you have like, let's say you're playing a shooter, right? You have like a primary weapon slot and you have a secondary weapon slot, but both could technically be empty, right? So we gotta populate it. We gotta put a gun into the slot, or in this case, a material. If you click on new down here, it'll add a new slot and it will add a material for you. I can't. And yes, that's true. I just kind of assumed. It's bad that I assumed. So you got your little black biddy. And now we can start painting it. So we go into edit mode again, I guess. Not edit mode, actually. Go into your 3D view. Select your cube. And up in the top left, click on object mode. You can also do Control Tab if you want to, and select Vertex Paint. Actually, come to think of it, we do have to do this in a very specific way in order to get really sharp edges instead of like blurry stuff. Like right here, you can see if I paint on any of these points, it just kind of creates this like gradient effect from point to point, which can be nice. It's not something we want, right? We want it to be like hard colors, which we need to approach this on a very specific way. So since we're still in Vertex Paint mode, what we want to do is we want to mask by faces. If we go back to the top left here, where we changed into Vertex Paint mode, to the right of that, there is our mask options. So we get paint mask per vertex selection or face selection. We want to select our face selection mask. That's paint mask, face selection, masking for painting. You'll see now, I think this should be grayed out for you as well. It's a little bit difficult to see here since everything is, I think, like white. So once we have this selected, we can go into edit mode. And in face selection mode, we're just going to select all the faces that we want to color. So like these bottom ones. And now we do Control or just tab actually, because we're going to be switching back and forth. Tab just switches to your last mode for your 3D view. Just switch back and forth really quickly. It's going to be nice in our case, right? But switch back to Vertex Paint mode. And now, up here, underneath the mask selection thing that we have activated, we've got black and white by default. And black is currently your primary color, right? So you got like a secondary and a primary color that we can paint with. You can quickly switch between them by pressing X, but we don't really need to. And for me, you can do whatever you want with the colors. I'm gonna make this as vibrant as possible at first. Let's have a look. I'm gonna kind of go with like a very pastelish light purple. It's almost pinkish, I guess. Maybe it is pinkish. I'm not really sure. It's more like a lavender, I guess. And once you have that selected, now that we have our mask selection here, if we press Control X, you see that everything that we have selected here, everything that is masked in, gets painted. So if I just turn this overlay off, you can see it a little bit better. It got this like pastel color. So we already have like a color set up right now here for this. And now I'm going to change the color again. I'm going to make this like a little bit more saturated. Maybe I'll just move it like this. And since we have this selection, we can actually do Control I to invert our selection. And then it can do Control X again to fill. Now you might notice something which is a little bit weird. And I'll repeat this because I assume you're probably still like trying to color everything in. But Blender has a kind of a strange default, which I think is just strange. I suppose it has to do something with rendering, but I absolutely hate the shit out of it. If you go to render in your properties window here in the bottom right, and you scroll down all the way, we have color management at the bottom. Open that tab up and you'll see a few settings. This might not make any sense to any of you, but view transform is what you want to look at. By default, it's set to AGX. Basically, it's like a color range that it works with to show you something, right? But AGX is not actually what we would see on computer, right? This is not something we see on our display, which is why it's kind of weird that it's the default. Just set this to standard. Do yourself a favor. See, like the colors actually reflect what we have up here now. Right? This makes more sense. I'm not really sure if this affects rendering. I think it does. I've had some issues with not getting pure whites, but some kind of like weird grays and having that like affect the masks that I've made before for certain things when I baked stuff. Very strange. Just set this to standard. You'll be fine. It's kind of technical. I'm sorry. I'm giving this to you because this is one of those things that nobody really explains to you. It's default and you don't know why. You know? Probably a stupid question, but is there an eraser, or do you just paint over the wrong, or do I just paint over a wrong vertex? I'm not really sure what this last part is supposed to mean, but essentially no, right? Every vertex point has a color, so if you want to replace a color, you just replace it with the color that you want. That's your eraser. So the way we're painting right now, in order to get these hard edges, because with vertex painting, okay, with vertex painting, what happens is you're painting on the vertices. So the points on your model. So you know how when you're in edit mode, you get these points that you can manipulate, right? And all these points, they store data by default, like positional data, like where is this in the 3D space locally? And that's how this gets rendered. But it also has like information about what they're connected to, for example, so that it actually renders out these faces, right? So these contain positional data and like relational data, but that can also contain color data, which is what we're doing right now. This is what Vertex Painting is about. So when you paint them by default, that kind of just spread out to everything else, right? Like this. And the only way you can actually get around that is by masking, right? So up here, we have paint mask. And you have vertex mask like this. So you can only paint on set vertices that we have selected. But if we have face selection like this, you have to select faces, and then you can still paint on these, but as you can see, they don't translate to the faces of the mesh that are not selected. So you can get these sharp edges. So you want to switch between edit mode and Vertex Paint mode in order to get this result. And that's how I did the bottom and the top like this. And you don't have to like paint it like this. You can just do Control X once you have your selection. And that's basically fill. Control X means fill. I'll go ahead and like paint the rest in. By the way, if you ever lose your color for some reason, you can hold Shift X. So Control X for filling, Shift X for color picking. You can do whatever you want with it. I'm gonna make it a little bit darker here. So to like 0.7 or something. Select these two faces. Maybe that's a little bit too dark. I'll do the same thing with these. That's how you can paint it. There is a quick little thing that I would like to point out real quick, is that right now, if we go into our first person perspective, I kind of want to call it that, or rather it's orthographic. If we go into orthographic mode, which is how we want to render this, because we don't want to have like weird stuff going on with the distance, right? Now for your numpadless people, your numpadless, kind of like maidenless, it's a numpad 1 to go to the front here. You'll see it's now completely flat. It kind of looks a little weird, maybe. And if you do not have a numpad, first of all, my condolences. Second of all, I have this hidden by default. You probably had this on already. You'll see this little widget. You can click on -Y here, and it'll snap like that. I hate this thing. You can use it if you want. This is actually meant for people who are on a laptop, believe it or not. But yeah, get to the front perspective and you'll see that your diamond is probably a little bit like, I don't know, small. You probably want to have it like this by default. It doesn't really matter since we're going to animate it, but let's just say you want to render it out, right? This is a lot more appealing than this, right? At least is what I'm saying. So in front perspective, once you're here, you click on this, right? Or you press numpad 1. Now from perspective, you want to rotate your cube / bitty. You press R, and then you press Z, because we want to rotate it on the Z axis, the one that's going up, so we can rotate like sideways. And rotate it 45 degrees, so you type in 45. You can also do hold control, and then it will move in increments of 5 degrees. You can kind of like snap it to 45 like that as well. Once you got this on 45 degrees here, we're going to do something that we did a little bit earlier as well, which is we're going to apply the rotation here. No, Control A for applying. And then I'm going to apply the rotation. You'll see here, it says it to 0, just like that. So yeah, rotate it 45 degrees and apply this the rotation like we just did, and you got a pretty nice little icon if you just want to have like an icon, right? All right, so let's animate this thing. So this area where we set up the material earlier, we're not going to need this anymore for the rest of this, so we can click on this icon and we're going to set it to the, see, I think timeline is going to be good for this. All right. First of all, when you have this window, you see a few things. So we have our timeline here. This is probably the most obvious thing that you're first going to see. This is basically a range of our frames that we have. By default, Blender starts at frame number 1 and ends at frame number 250. We're going to lower this to 60. I'm going to change this in a bit. There's a few things that are important here. I'll go over that later. First, we're going to do the animating, because this is probably the part that most of you are interested in. So when we animate stuff, we use keyframes. What are keyframes? Keyframes are basically recorded points in a space of time, right? So right now we don't have any keyframes. There is nothing animated. So if we play this, you can click on the play button here. You see nothing happens. Pause this again. So we have to set some keyframes. So we have to figure out, okay, what do we want to animate? You could animate location. You can animate rotation, scale, pretty much about anything, really. But for us, we just want to rotate it on the Z-axis like this. And since we got 2 colors only, like 2 things that are really different, we're going to rotate it 180 degrees, because that's basically the full range that we're going to be seeing. Now, since that we know that we're only going to animate the Z-axis, what you do with this N panel that you have here, so reminder, if you have this closed, you press N, or you can press this little button here. And then you go to rotation, you hover over this, over the Z-axis, and you right-click it, and press insert single keyframe. You can also press I like this, but what it will do is it'll make a note of every single thing here, every single part of your transform. We don't need all of that data. It's kind of a mess to work with here, because you add all of this stuff that you're not going to use. So what we're going to do is we're going to right-click the Z, rotation, and we're going to click insert single keyframe. So you see here now only this is animated. If we open this up, you see that it only has the Z Euler rotation. That's what we want. By the way, if you don't see like only 3 things here, just open this Dropbox here and click XYZ. It's a lot more gooder for your brain. Right, so we just set a keyframe on frame number 0. And we can now move the timeline to 60 here. And now you see that this is green. Basically what this means is it's animated, but it's not on a keyframe right now. So if we go back to 0, you see it's yellow. That means that we are currently on a keyframe. It is animated.
This is gonna be
Yeah, hamster. I'm going over like best habits right now, and regardless, it's a good habit, right? Well, I'm not gonna like argue this. Other than that, like, yeah, you can press it, but I'm gonna save everybody future headaches. You really only want to animate what you want to animate. So we're going back to 60. And now we can change this to 180 degrees. Just like this. You don't see a difference because basically it's the same thing. Let's just say you have every side different color. You might want to set this to 360 degrees so you get the full rotation. And now you're gonna right click it again and again click insert single keyframe. The object menu in the lower right is a little easier to keyframe single stuff. It has little buttons next to the value. The properties window. Okay. This one? Oh, okay. But yeah, so we now have this like animation and great. It animates. One caveat. It moves from like a fade in to like a fade out. You don't really want that. It's kind of annoying, right? You don't want it to have this like weird momentum. No, we're not going to talk about handle types at all. We're just going to say like we're going to keep this very simple. Nobody wants to deal with this. So we got these keyframes now. And we want to make sure that the speed is linear, so it doesn't like speed up and whatnot. So how we fix? So how we just went to timeline. We can now go to graph editor, which is under the animation tab. So we got dope sheet, timeline, graph editor. We're gonna go here. And you'll get into this window that you can't even really like see a lot, you know? This is supposed to be a graph. They're editing a graph essentially. And how do you navigate through this? Middle mouse and scrolling. There, let's scroll out a little bit. You see, it's kind of just annoying to work with by default. And if you hold Control middle mouse, be very gentle with this. You can actually move this so that it all fits in one view. I'm pretty sure there's like a button to fit it all. I think, yeah, there you go. If you press A and select all the handles and then press the focus button, which is numpad period. Here, if you don't have a numpad, click on view after you select everything and then press frame selected like that. Home button? Does home button work? Does home button do? Yeah, home button. Wow. All kind of thing. Frame all. Yeah, that'll work. You don't even need to select anything for that, I think. So let's try that. Yeah, that's perfect. Home button actually works perfectly. So I think everybody has a home button. So if you want to get everything in view, just press home. We actually don't really need to see anything, but it's just good for context here that you can actually see what's going on. So after you have this in view, press A, make sure that all of these are selected. And then you right click. And you scroll down to interpolation mode. And I'm going to set it to linear. And basically this means that it goes through these values at a linear speed, which basically means constant rate. That's what you want. See how close we are to like getting the emote already, right? Like compare them. They're almost the same. Now for my animation, I changed it up a little bit because I think that in general, these are a little bit too many frames, right? GIFs get heavy really quickly. And this looks really smooth, right? But realistically, they're only like, I don't know, like 20 frames. So I guess let's set this to like 20, I guess. So we're going back to the timeline here. Look at all these keyframes here. I'm just gonna move them to keyframe 20. You see, that goes way too fast. All right. So what we want to do is change the frame rate. And I'm sure some of you might have wondered, okay, how do I change the frame rate, right? So if you want to change the frame rate, we have to go to the output window inside of your properties area. And why we go in there is because the output is basically where all the information is in regards to how your output is going to be. Like how are you going to render this, right? So how many frames are we going to have? What is the resolution of your final image? Stuff like that. So we're going to the output window. And we'll have to like find this. I think, yeah, it's right here. Under format, frame rate, 24 FPS. I think I set this to 12. And you see, like, if you're close up, it looks very jittery, but when you zoom out, it's better. I think this is the same speed. It's really hard to, like, really tell. Yeah, it is personal preference, and this is just the default of Blender, so I'm just gonna kind of roll with it, right? You can play around with it once you're kind of familiar with how it works and like how to set things up, and then you can go wild with Blender, right? That's kind of the point of this. So yeah, I've set the frame rate to 12, which is basically like half, and this is going to be fine. As you can see, like this looks very pretty, very good, so no reason to worry about that. Now, class, how are we going to rotate this so it's sideways? There's a few things you could do. You know, we don't have our camera yet. What you could do is rotate the camera, right? You could also rotate the object, you think? Well, I got some news for you. You rotate this. Okay, looks fine, right? Let's animate it. I don't think we want this, right? I mean, hey, who knows? Maybe you do want this, but I sure as hell know I don't want this. So how do we fix? There's a few ways you can do this. You can put it on a bone if you want to. Or you parent it to something else that's rotated, and then this keeps its own local rotation. And that's where hamster comes in with the answer. We're gonna have an empty object, alright? So basically we're gonna have like a parent object that has like its own rotation, and then we have this object which is a child of that, and it has its also its own rotation, and that rotation is what we have right now. And the object that we put this on is going to be rotated for us. Alright. So we're going to make a parent object now. that we're going to put our biddy on so that it can rotate the way it's supposed to, like from left to right, just counterclockwise apparently, which is kind of weird, but I don't know, looks good, I guess. So let's pause our timeline and let's add ourselves an empty. So I'm going to do Shift A or add up here, and then we're going to look for empty, which is down underneath all the mesh related stuff and armatures. And there's a few empties that you can pick. These are all for visual representation mostly. And I'm going to pick a single arrow because this makes a lot more sense for like, I don't know, like a 2D render. And so you see we've got a very, very big arrow. I'm just going to make this 0.1 in size. So we can kind of like see it pop out on the top there. And now we know what the direction of this arrow is, right? It's empty that we have. And I'm going to just open up the end panel here. Press N. And you can now rotate this like this. But don't do that yet. I'm just showing you this is the plan. And it's its own thing. And you can see how this moves. And we want this to go along with that. So how do we do that? We select our biddy, and then we shift click on the arrow in the background, or empty. And now we do Control P for parenting. Wonder if it's like in here, object, parents, object. I guess you can do that. You can also do Control P, object, Control P for parent. And now we can rotate this. Now I'm not really a fan of this being like not 0, so I'm just gonna set all that other stuff to 0 like that. I don't think you really have to do that, it's just something I like to do. And now if we play this again, let's see, we have exactly the behavior that we want. And you kind of like move this wherever you want to. You can rotate it any kind of way. It'll keep playing the animation as you're used to. So I'm just gonna call this empty like rotation helper or something like that. So very cool, we got like an animation on it right now. So what would the next step be? I think this is the point where we should add a camera. Not just because I want to add a camera, but also because we kind of need it for the next part of this. So let's move this back to frame 0. And let's have a look. So most of you should already have a camera in your scene. In case you do not have a camera, I'll just remove this one. And Shift A, and then click camera, almost at the bottom. Same again here, camera, add camera, just like that. Seems to want to like align with the view that you have originally, so I guess you could go in front perspective and then add the camera, I guess, if you want to. And move this back a little bit, so like this. If you press numpad 0, you'll like align your view to the camera. I'm pretty sure you can do that through here as well with view, viewpoint, camera, just like that. And now we're going to play with the camera settings, because by default this camera is not orthographic. It will try to do like perspective view. And how do we do that? Well, we got a camera object, and that camera has camera data. So what do? We go to the properties window. This is properties of our object, right? Right. And then we go to the camera data right here. And by default, it will be set to perspective. We want to set to orthographic. See, it's like really small right now. That's because by default, the orthographic scale is set to 0.6 or 6. It's like 0.6, 6. And we're just gonna zoom this way and set this to not this. I think 0.16 is about right. Bigger, 0.14. And now we're essentially done with this. Just got our camera set up. Next up, outline. This could be fine on its own if you're happy with this. I'm not happy with it yet. So I'm gonna go on and add that outline to it. And how do we do that? First of all, a small note. In the top right here, we have a drop down next to these 4 icons. So these are the render modes that you can have it in. So we got our wireframe mode, solid view, which is basically nothing, material view, which is with our materials, and then we have rendered, which does the lighting a little bit better, but we don't have like the shading node for that, so it doesn't really do anything. And down in the bottom right here, we see Compositor. By default, it's disabled in the viewport. We want this to be on always. Okay, so we can see what our compositor is going to be doing, and we are going to do an outline on it. Something we do want to do before we move into that step, though, is for our output. As an output, it's in render. Down here, we have film. So if you can't see it, scroll down until you see film, open this up and set it to transparent. If I render it now with transparency off, you'll see it has like the gray background here. And if we turn this on, you'll see we get the checkerboard in the background, which means that it's transparent. This is what we want. Let me go back to object mode, and we're gonna go to the compositing tab. And you guys all have this thing, it's up here. And you should have this window. This should be exactly the same for you as it is for me, because I did not change this in my setup when I saved my default startup. So you should have a window kind of like this. But yeah, it's empty right now. And the reason why it's empty is because we're not using nodes. And so a lot of things in Blender require nodes to work. You know, we got the shader editor, which is basically a bunch of nodes that say like, okay, we have our input and then we have our output. You have geonodes, which is the same thing. And the same thing happens for the compositor. So I'll explain this when we click on the use nodes button on the top left. So once you go to the compositor, the compositing workspace, you click on use nodes up in the top left here of the compositor window. Click on this. You'll see it automatically grabs the render that I just made. If you don't see this, you just haven't pressed F12 yet. So just press F12. It'll make a little render for you here. And it shows you this. This is the render layer. So this is what we just rendered out. And then you see this node connecting to these two things. So we got the viewer and the composite. What all of this is, render layers is essentially what you just rendered out. So every time you're going to press F12, it will put the rendered image in here. And then we can use the output of that in order to do stuff with it. This is what we call post-processing, which basically means effects that are added onto your image after your render. This is also done in gaming. This is done in video production, and we're gonna do it kind of for video production now. I mean, we're gonna be rendering out individual frames, which we're going to compose into a GIF afterwards. So it's kind of video editing, right? But this can also just be for single renders, single frames. Yeah, and I have like preview thingies now. But we want to add an outline, and it's gonna get a little bit complicated because we have our transparency layer, but we really, really need this thing. So bear with me. And I'm gonna pull this one out of my ass right now. In order to create an outline, we need a node called dilate/erode. So I'm gonna go do Shift A. It's the same as with the material editor, same as in 3D view. If you want to add nodes or like objects into our view, we need to add something, right? So Shift A for adding something. Again, you can also do this up here. And this should be under filter. So if you want to use this window, you can do filter and then look for dilate/erode. Okay. So this doesn't do anything on its own. It needs an input. So we have our image here, and then we have our alpha. And you see these colors here represent things. So yellow means this is a color output, and basically it takes every single pixel here and checks what color it is. And alpha is a float value, which basically means a value between 0 and 1. And this is going to tell us whether something is transparent or not, right? Or if there's like an in-between where it's like a little bit transparent. And we're going to need this. So this alpha is going to go right into the mask here. And we can put this in here. Set this to the viewer. How I just did that is basically you can drag this in here, or you can do Control-Shift-Click. It's kind of a shame that I can't have like the keyboard input thing here, so I'll just narrate what I'm doing. Okay, so Control-Shift-Click on this, you can put it into the viewer, and you see here it is black and white. So the black would represent zeros and the white would represent ones, and everything in between is kind of like a mix. And if we scroll this up, you see it expands it, but it can also do the opposite. But we want to expand it by like 20. Side note, I'm currently on a resolution of 1080 by 1080 for the render. So whatever I'm going to be doing here, this is where the math portion comes in. We're going to kind of use the current resolution as like a reference for what the outline is going to be at the final render, which is going to be different sizes, because for Twitch they want you to have 3 resolutions. There's an easy way to go about this in Blender if you want to have render outputs. It's not a completely streamlined process, but it works. Maybe you can write an easy script for it. I don't do that, so don't ask me. But yeah, we got this black and white image, right? Very cool. Now, like, what would you do with that, right? Let's see if we can like zoom this out, zoom in out, see backdrop. So is this Alt V or V? Alt V. So now we can have it like in the view right here. So how do we use this, right? Because we want to have this image, but we also want the outline in the background. So we need to combine these two. So what we can do, alpha over, no, that's the wrong one. Yep, here we go. So let's have a look. Let's put this into the viewer and throw this in and throw this in. These, the viewer and the compositor, used to have like their own alpha input so that you could set the alpha specifically, but now you have to do it using the set alpha thing. Usually it's like implied, but we need set alpha. Great. I remember like Googling this the other day too. It was like, okay, weird. People were complaining about it. It's like, oh, that's not very intuitive. Yeah, it's not. Here we go. No, there's something else you notice. It isn't quite nice. These like hard edges here, like they kind of like cut off really sharply. That has to do with this, the mode that we have. It says steps here. So there's a few other ones. You got like feather that has like this kind of like gradient effect, which is kind of cool, you know, like that's nice if you want that. We want distance. This makes these nice little round edges. And let's have a look here. So you might notice something. We can actually see it in here, right? If you like zoom in and out, the outline becomes bigger or smaller, depending on like what you're doing with it. And if you like play this animation, I mean, it works. Great, fantastic. But that outline being all kinds of sizes is not good. It's kind of bad. So since we want to render this out at like significantly smaller sizes, so the default resolution for emotes on Twitch is 112 by 112, and we have our outline set to like 20 pixels. That easily takes up like 60%, no, 40%, 30-40% of like the space already of our image. So I don't think we want that. Right, so for example, let's put this on 112. Hello? All right. There we go. All right, this needs to go in there. That's what we're going to be rendering. Let's see. So let's do the calculations for this. So we got the basic setup here. Right, we got our outline, we got our alpha over, set alpha. So this thing is just kind of like necessary evil. This is our mixer to get this image on top of the outline that we made, because without it, it would just be the outline. But now we have to make sure that this outline is going to always kind of be the right size, right? And we base this on 1080 by 1080, and now we have it on, what is this, like 112 by 112? That doesn't really make any sense. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to add some values here. So if you look up value, it's going to be under input and then constants. We have values right here. I like to use these because this helps me visualize it a little bit better. And you can rename this to whatever you want if you press F2 on your keyboard. So F2, and you can change the node label. You can also change the node label in here on the right hand side on the end panel. You can click the label, and then we can write down like relative size, for example. And then here we can change this to like original size, right? Change this to like relative outline size. Let's do that. So set this to 20, and then we set this one to 1080 because this was our original size, and this was our relative outline size that we had back then. So that would be 20. This would be 1080, and now we have to calculate this into what it would be if it was less. So a good way to kind of like figure this out, if you want to, is like, okay, what would this be if it was like 50% of this, right? So we got 1080. Half of that is 540, and when it's 540, this needs to be 10, right? So I have to do some math. Of math. And there's one more thing that we need. We need information about the render size. And I just realized I added this like really quickly. So I'm gonna add that again. Utilities, math. Like this. I'm gonna leave this here for a second though, because we need more inputs. Add input, and we want image info. So we take this image, the rendered image, and we plug that in here. And then we need to figure out the dimensions of this. So we need to add another node. So we know what the yellow things are. These are color data. And then we got the gray ones, which are float data, which is basically 0 to 1s. Wow. And the blue ones are vector data, and those are basically 3 float values. So location would be like X, Y, Z or something. In this case, it would be like X and Y. Same for dimensions. And we want to untangle that. So we're going to go to add vector, and we're going to separate this. So we're going to get the dimensions, and we want the X dimension. We're just going to assume that every image that you're going to be rendering here is going to be the same X and Y height or size. So how would we calculate this, right? Because we need to adjust this, and we basically want to turn this into a magnitude, I guess, maybe, for lack of better words right now. So let's say we have 1080 divided by 1080, you get 1. 1080 divided by, or let's make this easier. Let's say the original size is 2, and we have like a size that is 1. We do 2 divided by 1, you get 2. That doesn't make any sense. So 1 divided by 2 is 0.5. So the smaller number comes first. So we do 1 divided by 2, or 540 divided by 1080. So we divide this. It should be like 0.5. So let's try that out in a calculator. I think it's gonna be fine. But 540 divided by 1080 is 0.5. So now what we do with this is we add another math node. And I'm so sorry for everybody here who's like following along and you're like, I don't like math. I get it. Necessary evil, okay? So we multiply the outline size by this magnitude, I guess. And then we set this into the size. So you see this now changed to something a lot more reasonable. That's fine. And now if we change the render resolution, it should stay fine regardless. There is one situation where it wasn't. If I set this to like 25%, which is basically like a one-time, or it's the smallest emote you can get on Twitch. And if we go to compositing here, or if we render this out, you'll see you can't really see it, right? And if I set this to 50 and I render it out, this is still fine, right? 100%, this is still fine. 25%, this is the smallest you can get. It looks like, well, I don't want to say it looks like shit. You just can't really see it. Can't really see it. So, when I render this out on 25, I set this to 40. I double the size, and now you can actually see it. Right? Maybe you could use like a clamp, perhaps. Instead of like, okay, well, it can't be smaller than this. I guess I could do that. It's like a ramp clamp right here. This is under utilities. Add utilities clamp. This is like infinite. No, you can't do infinite. Well, let's just do like something ridiculous. 10,000. Let's put it in here. Why not? I don't have this in the original project, but like, set this to 20 again. If you don't want to see all this, by the way, if you're like, okay, this is like way too much shit, right? You can always select all of this, like to group this with Control G. And now this is its own little thing. And you can go back up to like the original place. Now you see it's all like in this nice, neat little box. And you can reuse this elsewhere, but we won't really be doing that. I'll just leave it like this here. Now that's done, we can actually start rendering this out. So right now we have set this to 25%. I'm gonna set this to 100, okay? And before we start rendering stuff now, so just so you know, we're in the output tab of the properties window. Nothing else needs to be done here. Eevee is fine because we're using vertex colors, flat shading. We don't need any special rendering stuff. And we set the resolution to 112 by 112, which is the default for Twitch. 100%, this is for the biggest version of the emote. And the frame rate set to 12 because we really don't need more frames for this. This is fine. And our frame starts and ends at 20. So we only have 20 frames. So what's next? We need to set a, what do we call this? Directory for our output. By default, it's going to put it in the temp file folder, which is hidden in your C drive, assuming C drive is your main drive. I would suggest you change this to something else. It's a little bit hard to find this thing. So let's just say you have your project here, right? And so for example, we have emotes here. I don't have a safe folder here for this new one that we made, so it's gonna be whatever. I'm gonna keep this one. So let's just say bit emote stuff. Let's make a new folder. I'm just gonna put everything in here. Let's just imagine that my project's like saved in here. I'd make a new folder and I'm gonna call this one sequence export folder. Okay. Because we're going to be exporting a sequence of images and it's going to get really, really messy. And now I'm going to copy this path and I'm going to put it in here. Okay. Ooh. Starting to smell like food in here. Now, next up, you want to do Control F12, or I actually don't really know where this is like hidden. can kind of check render. It's in render. Where's render? Oh, it's like up here. Okay. Render animation. Control F12. So you do this, you'll see it renders everything out. And now if we go to our folder, it's in this folder probably. Yeah, that's what I thought. God damn it. Piece of shit. The second time it's happened. I guess just use this instead. Don't use the copy paste thing. Yeah. Since it's small, I can just do this again. It doesn't take long. So here you go. You got like all your frames. Fantastic. What the fuck do you do with this, right? It's like a bunch of PNGs. Now, my condolences. Blender doesn't have a default GIF exporter, and I have not seen anybody who actually made something for it, which is kind of weird to me, right? Like, why not? Why is there no encoder for GIF? I guess Blender thinks it's kind of like faded out, you know? GIFs are pretty big, relatively. WebMs are kind of the future, if you ask me, but, you know, places like Twitch still want you to use GIFs, so you just kind of have to make do with it. And this is also where I'm going to tell you to install something. Or I guess you could maybe use a website for this. I personally use Screen to GIF for this. And they have a recorder, so you can like record stuff. And you can even like export it as like a WebM as well. But obviously it's called Screen to GIF. I don't want the recorder, I want the editor, right? By default, it's going to be blank, just like this. There's not going to be anything in it. And what I can do is if I select the first frame here and then hold shift, select the last frame and drag this into this, we have it in our editor. It's pretty much previewing what it would be like. If you're not happy with the speed, you can adjust it. See, like an edit here, and you can override the delay. By default, it's like 66. This is defined. I don't think it's defined by Blender, actually. Either way, I'm happy with this. I think this is fine. And I just want to save it. So I go to File, Save As, go up, set this to a GIF, which is at the top. One important thing to note here is there is a enable transparency check box here. You want to click on that. Colors 256. I put the sampling on best because I want the best quality for my little emote, right? And then you can just export it. And you can put it wherever. If you want to have like a separate folder for rendering this, you can have that. Oh, well, it's gonna have like the wrong name now. Just save it again. I would recommend you name this like, well, for me, it's like a bit or emote bit, and then I call this X4. Why do I call it X4? It's because it's the biggest size and it's going to be 4 times the size of the smallest one. So I'm going to call it bit X4, save it. And now we basically do this entire process again. So I do Control A, select everything here in this, and remove all the frames. Okay. And then in Blender, I'm gonna export the next set of sequences. So here I do 50%, Control F12, render it out, go back to Screen to GIF, sequence export. This is now the smaller size. I just overrid all of those. Save as X2. There we go. Go back in here, so that the 25%, Control F12. Select everything, delete everything. Move it in there. save as ×1. Why am I making 3 sizes? It's for Twitch. Because Twitch requires you to have like 3 sizes of the emote. I tried like automatically converting it, but it didn't work. And it's better to have more control. After all, the smallest one has a thicker outline as well. So it's kind of like a quality control kind of thing as well. So now we have these. Now, if you want to have like a link, oh, that's nice. Screen to GIF. Well, I'm gonna get you a link. This is it. Screentogif.com. Put it in chat. If you get hacked, not my problem. Probably on GitHub too. So yeah, there you go. And that's how you do it. I know it's a little bit awkward that you have to like do the GIF part outside of Blender, but it's just like a limit of Blender. And since you have this entire project and you've got the composer and whatnot, you can also make other emotes in here if you wanted to. Same process. Like you could even do it with like a simple cube, I guess. Let's see how quickly we can like make like a different kind of like thingy. Let's just assume I want like you know what? Icosphere, right? Okay. So let's hide this thing. And now let's animate this, I suppose. This definitely needs like 360 degrees. Okay. Graph editor, right click. Oh, nope. Yeah, that's horrendous to look at. 40. So it's set to 0, and then we can like put this on there. That's the 45 again. There you go. New GIF. Oh, of course, it'd be a good idea to like, I don't know, not have this be rendered. I love how it looks bad because we don't have the material. And even if we do, it's like gonna be black. Interesting. It looks very interesting without any color. It kind of looks like something that's like unstable, an unstable blob or something. Huh. Rotating void, yeah, I guess. We need our shader. I just want to appear in the font. Hi, Mom! Hi! Hi! Hi, Mom, I'm on TV. I'm on Twitch, Mom. Oh, you sent me an image. You got the pink diamond thingy. That's about it. Let's have a look. Oh. What the hell? That is not Blender. That's not Blender. I'm doing a Blender tutorial, Phoenix. What do you mean this is Blender? What the fuck? What version of Blender is this? Hold on, Crazix, look at this. Look at this thing. 1.8. What monstrosity is this? Look at this. That looks like cat or something.
It's flat.
1.8. I didn't even do Blender back then. What the hell? Trolling me. If you want to follow this tutorial, I don't even know. Did they even have vertex colors back? I mean, surely. Sure, yeah, probably. But man, come on. Yeah. No, you can't hear me. That's music. You're gaslighting my chat, huh? Yeah. Oh no, thanks for the follows, guys. Okay. That's what I just said. Oh my god.